The nearest thing you'd have to a capitalist. They'd be, you know, the village smith and possibly a very low level of household manufacture. But it would be a very primitive level and not aimed at, they wouldn't take up home commodities, they wouldn't be engaged in production to be sold on the market. It would be, you know, local sale to meet local needs. So no, I don't see that as capitalist penetration. What was the other thing you asked?
Well, that was it. But I think you may have slightly misunderstood what I was trying to say. I don't mean capitalism as a full-blown system. I mean, you know, the early development through merchants and the ability to take taxes in money taxes instead of taxes in kind. And thus being able to more effectively control and tax the peasantry, you know, rather than just saying, you know, so many, you know, so much grain, so many cows, whatever. You can say, right, this village pays so many pennies, that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, there's certainly, you know, money does increase in importance in this period. Yeah, and you know, it's more convenient for the person collecting it to handle money than to, you know, go to a village and end up with you know, 20 chickens, three bushels of grain and a bottle of wine. You know, you can't cart that kind of stuff around easily. So yes, you know, you pay money whether, you know, whether the harvest this year was as good as it was last year. You know, 20 bushels of grain is your tax. You know, he says, well, I've eaten 20 bushels and I've got nothing left. You know, he says, you know, all right, then let's have the money. Yeah, sure.
You could almost say, well, we can't tax people properly. Let's invent something called money so we can get more out of them.
John?
Picking up on what Adam was talking and mentioned in the Peasants' War, somewhere Engels referred to it, Thomas Minzer, and he was for basically for the not disturbing the ownership and what we'd say today communal ownership. And I think it was with the onset of the Reformation with Luther, and the idea then was to be more, shall we say, private enterprise. And I think Luther had Münzer done in, I believe. So the Reformation was around the corner at that time. That would be basically my question. The Peasants' War being in 1525. Jackie?
Yes, you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, that this noble sort of person came along and said to the peasants he's going to help, or the yokels he's going to help them, it's not fair, let's go and do this, and more or less gathered them into some sort of rioting army and carried them off. Was that like more or less like today's career politicians sort of things in the dirty rotten borough cynic law, where they're getting their own private armies, leaders? You know, how come it was so easy for yokels, who I wouldn't have thought would have shared the same sort of way of life as such, to look at this person and say, yes, let's follow him, let's take up arms and do his bidding sort of thing.
I think there would be, certainly there would be cases of where the local baron, the local landowner, the local bigwig would go down to the village and say, look, I want 20 volunteers.
Margaret, and then you.
Was there an emergence of goldsmiths during the period 1450 to 1650? Like money being created, banks and goldsmiths and those that were money lenders. Was there any development in that during that period that would have impacted on peasants' way of life?
I wouldn't have thought so. Certainly the peasants did have money, you know, did deal with money, but only very marginally. And I doubt whether your average peasant would see gold outside the particularly well furnished local cathedral.
And goldsmiths too, any
You know,
type of
gold, certainly the amount of gold in circulation increased because of the discoveries of the New World. And it was mainly silver coming in from the Americas, but there was a large amount of gold as well. I mean, the Spanish invaders of Central and South America shipped out huge amounts of gold ornaments and what have you, and simply smelted it down. They didn't appreciate the artistic worth of the things they stole. You know,
But not just
they would need that kind of increase would need someone locally to, you know, in Europe to work it up.
But not just gold, also in goods, just gold, just lenders, people that would mortgage. So they would, if you had a debt, like a debt collector, was there anything such as that would be as in a
Not that I'm aware of. Not. You know, it wasn't a concern that anybody went to war. You know, revolted against authority in any way to take it down. You know, it wouldn't have been the first thing in their field of vision. What they're interested in is the next harvest.
Vincent?
I think the point that Gwynn made earlier on in his talk about the rebellions not really being that revolutionary in content, but really just a dissatisfaction with taxation levels and with the monarch's ministers, as opposed to being direct opposition to the monarch and the government in general. That's an interesting point if you draw parallels between those countries that Gwynn mentioned and that period in history and the situation in Russia in the 19th and early 20th century, when generally the peasantry were quite conservative in their attitude, and they used terms like a batushka tsar, the little father, to describe their high regard for the monarch of Russia, and even at in the early years of the 20th century in Russia, when things were getting pretty desperate, the Russo-Japanese War and the high unemployment levels there and shortage of bread in the cities. When they did finally stage demonstrations, it was to plead to the Tsar not